On the 19th of April, 2024, shortly after 2 in the morning local time, a ballistic missile screamed through the night sky over Tel Aviv. 123 similar weapons followed in the next 7 hours. Iranian television cameras captured the launches from mobile platforms scattered across the western provinces. Official statements from Tehran proclaimed this as Operation True Promise, righteous retaliation for an Israeli strike on Damascus. The world watched in real time as Israel's air defense network intercepted 99% of the incoming projectiles. Commentators declared victory for Israel's technological superiority. Military analysts counted the missiles, calculated interception rates, and moved on to the next crisis. But 3 intelligence analysts in a basement office at Langley noticed something nobody else had bothered to calculate. Iran had just fired 120 ballistic missiles in a single night. Not artillery rockets, not cruise missiles, full-sized ballistic missiles, each one requiring specialized fuel, guidance systems, mobile launchers, and trained crews. Tehran had demonstrated the capacity to coordinate this massive strike with precision timing across multiple launch sites simultaneously. One analyst pulled up historical data. During the entire 8-year Iran-Iraq War, from 1980 to 1988, Iran had struggled to fire 100 missiles total. Most of those were primitive Soviet-era Scuds purchased from Libya and North Korea. Now, 4 decades later, Tehran had launched that many in 7 hours. The question haunted the analysis. Where did Iran get thousands of missiles? Not one journalist asked. Nobody in the defense establishment seemed to find it remarkable. Israel had intercepted them. That was the story. End of discussion. But the analyst kept digging through intelligence archives. What she found made no sense. According to every assessment from every major intelligence agency, American, British, French, Israeli, German, Iran should not possess the industrial capacity to build missiles at this scale. Comprehensive sanctions had been in place since 1979. Export controls blocked dual-use technologies. Western companies couldn't sell Iran the precision machinery needed for missile manufacturing. Russian and Chinese suppliers operated under United Nations restrictions. Yet by March of 2020, American intelligence estimated Iran possessed over 3,000 ballistic missiles. General Kenneth McKenzie of United States Central Command stated this publicly. Not 300, not even 1,000, 3,000, plus an unknown number of cruise missiles and space launch vehicles that could serve as long-range delivery systems. The arithmetic didn't work. Iran's defense budget couldn't support domestic production at that scale. The country's economy was strangled by sanctions. Its access to international banking systems had been severed. Raw materials for solid rocket fuel, specialized chemicals like ammonium perchlorate and aluminum powder, required sophisticated supply chains that Iran supposedly couldn't access. Someone was helping. That much was obvious. But who and how? 35 years earlier, on a cold March morning in 1988, Iraqi artillery crews positioned their launchers at coordinates they'd been given that morning. Targeting data had arrived from headquarters the previous night. Tehran was 500 kilometers away, well beyond the range of conventional Scud missiles. But these weren't conventional Scuds. At 0600 hours, the order came through encrypted channels. Fire. 12 missiles lifted off within 90 seconds of each other. Eyewitnesses in Tehran reported the first impacts at 0642. The warheads struck residential neighborhoods in the northern districts. Buildings collapsed. Fires erupted. Emergency services couldn't respond fast enough. By noon, casualty reports reached 200 civilians. Within the week, that number would triple. This was the fifth phase of what would become known as the War of the Cities. Between January and February of 1988, Iraq launched 533 ballistic missiles against 27 Iranian cities. 414 struck their targets. 2,312 civilians perished. 11,625 were wounded. Tehran was hit by 118 missiles over 52 days, an average of 5 deaths per missile strike. Schools, hospitals, markets, apartment buildings. The weapons weren't accurate enough to target military installations, so Saddam Hussein's strategy focused on breaking civilian morale through terror. Iran had almost no ability to retaliate effectively. The country possessed perhaps a dozen Scud-B missiles purchased from Libya years earlier. These weapons had 300-kilometer range and primitive guidance systems. Iranian engineers didn't know how to maintain them properly. Half failed during launch preparations. Those that flew often missed their targets by kilometers. On the 41st day of bombardment, a meeting took place in a secure facility beneath Tehran. Present were commanders from the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, scientists from Iran's nascent defense industry, and representatives from the Office of the Supreme Leader. The topic required no introduction. Everyone in the room had watched their capital burn. The conclusion was unanimous and irreversible. Iran must develop indigenous missile production capability, no matter the cost, no matter how long it took. The nation would never again find itself defenseless while enemies rained explosives on civilian populations with impunity. But Iran had no missile technology, no production facilities, no expertise. The Shah's pre-revolution arms purchases had focused on advanced fighter aircraft, not ballistic missiles. After the Islamic Revolution of 1979, Western suppliers cut all ties. Iran's once formidable air force deteriorated from lack of spare parts. Sanctions prevented procurement of replacement systems. The Revolutionary Guards sent delegations to only nations willing to help, those already outside the Western sphere of influence. Libya had missiles but couldn't produce them. Syria had access to Soviet systems but no production capacity. The Soviet Union itself showed no interest in assisting a revolutionary Islamic state that had destabilized its southern border. Then, in July of 1987, representatives from the Islamic Republic of Iran met with officials from the Democratic People's Republic of Korea in Damascus. The North Koreans made an unusual offer. Pyongyang would sell Iran 90 Scud-B missiles immediately. Delivery would occur before the missiles entered service in North Korea's own military. Furthermore, North Korea would transfer complete production technology. Engineers would receive training. Manufacturing facilities would be built on Iranian soil. In exchange, Tehran would provide hard currency and crude oil. The first batch arrived within weeks. Iranian crews fired most of them at Baghdad and Iraqi border cities within months. But unlike the previous missiles from Libya, these came with something unprecedented: assembly diagrams, technical specifications and the promise of more to come. According to United States Defense Department assessments, Iran fired nearly 100 Scud missiles at Iraq between 1985 and 1988. Every one of them was purchased from foreign suppliers. Iran didn't manufacture a single missile during the entire 8-year war. Yet within 5 years, Iran would possess operational production lines for Scud-B and Scud-C variants. Within 10 years, Iranian engineers would be testing medium-range missiles that could reach anywhere in the Middle East. Within 15 years, Tehran would be exporting missile technology to Syria and Lebanon. What happened in the decade between 1988 and 1998 remains one of the least understood technology transfers in modern military history. Western intelligence agencies knew North Korea was involved. Satellite imagery confirmed visits by Iranian delegations to North Korean facilities. Cargo ships traveling between North Korean and Iranian ports were tracked by naval reconnaissance. Occasional intercepts of communications revealed code words and payment arrangements. But the scale of the cooperation remained hidden. In May of 1993, North Korea achieved a breakthrough. The Nodong-1 medium-range ballistic missile completed its first successful test. A 21-member Iranian delegation was present at the test site. The group included Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps commanders and representatives from Iran's defense industry organization. They weren't just observers. They were customers who had helped finance the development. The Nodong had 1,300 kilometers range, enough to reach Tel Aviv from western Iran. The Iranians requested North Korea expand that range slightly. Pyongyang agreed. Delivery of complete missiles began soon after. But Tehran wanted more than weapons. They wanted the knowledge to build them. North Korea constructed 2 facilities on Iranian territory. The first was a large missile testing complex near Imshar in Fars province. The second was a tracking station at Tabas in South Khorasan province. Both facilities were designed and built by North Korean engineers. Iranian technicians trained alongside them, learning every aspect of missile launch operations, telemetry systems, and tracking capabilities. By 1997, American spy satellites detected something new at a facility northwest of Parchin. Signature emissions consistent with test-firing large liquid propellant rocket engines. The pattern matched technology from the Soviet SS-4 Sandal missile, a design from the 1950s. Russia denied providing any such technology, but intelligence analysts noted that North Korea had obtained SS-4 plans years earlier through other channels. The technology was now flowing to Iran. In November of 1999, 12 Nodong missile engines arrived at an Iranian port facility. Shipping manifests listed the cargo as industrial equipment. The engines were transported under heavy guard to Isfahan. Satellite reconnaissance tracked the convoy for 300 kilometers. The destination was Iran's largest missile assembly complex, a facility built with North Korean and Chinese assistance in the late 1980s. Iranian engineers used those engines to develop the Shahab 3. The first test came in July of 1998. The 16-meter-long missile exploded mid-flight. American officials debated whether the explosion was accidental or intentional. A second test in July of 2000 used a North Korean engine. This time the missile flew its full range. Production began at a rate of several units per month. By 2003, Shahab 3 missiles rolled through military parades in Tehran. Mobile launchers displayed the weapons openly, Iran claims self-sufficiency in medium-range missile production. Western analysts confirmed the claim was largely accurate. Iran had achieved in 15 years what typically required decades of indigenous development. But something didn't add up. Missiles require more than designs and engines. Guidance systems need precision gyroscopes and accelerometers. Solid fuel production demands exact chemical formulations and specialized mixing equipment. Mobile launchers need hydraulic systems and fire control computers. Warhead re-entry vehicles must withstand extreme temperatures and aerodynamic stress. North Korea provided the basic missile technology, but North Korea didn't manufacture precision guidance components. Those required advanced machine tools, fiber optic gyroscopes, and electronic components that Pyongyang itself had to import. Someone else was in the supply chain. In June of 1996, United States congressional investigators presented evidence that China had delivered dozens, possibly hundreds, of missile guidance systems and computerized machine tools to Iran. The equipment came through Chinese state-owned enterprises that officially produced civilian goods, but maintained close ties to the People's Liberation Army. China's role in Iran's missile program predated even the North Korean partnership. During the 1980s Iran-Iraq War, Beijing sold Tehran thousands of tanks, armored vehicles, and artillery pieces. The relationship grew from strategic calculation. Both nations opposed superpower hegemony and sought to build influence independent of Washington and Moscow. China found in Iran a cash customer willing to pay for weapons systems that Western suppliers refused to sell. The Rumsfeld Commission, formerly known as the Commission to Assess the Ballistic Missile Threat to the United States, reported in 1998 that China had carried out extensive transfers to Iran's solid-fueled ballistic missile program. This was significant. Solid fuel missiles offer major operational advantages over liquid fuel designs. They can be stored, fueled, and ready to launch. Preparation time drops from hours to minutes. The missiles are more stable, more mobile, and harder to detect before launch. But solid fuel technology is extraordinarily difficult to master. The propellant must be mixed precisely, cast into large rocket motors without voids or imperfections, and bonded to motor casings that can withstand enormous internal pressures. The United States took decades to perfect these techniques. China developed them through extensive espionage and reverse engineering of Soviet designs. Iran accessed China's solid fuel expertise through a series of agreements that began in the early 1990s. Chinese entities didn't just sell finished components, they provided training, technical documentation, and specialized equipment. By the early 2000s, Iran was testing its first solid-fuel missile, the Sagiu. The system used a two-stage design that demonstrated sophisticated understanding of solid rocket propulsion. Intelligence analysts noticed something else. The missiles showing up in Iranian parades contained components that didn't match North Korean or indigenous Iranian manufacturing signatures. Circuit boards used surface mount technology only available from Chinese suppliers. Guidance systems incorporated fiber optic gyroscopes that required precision manufacturing equipment Iran didn't possess. Telemetry systems operated on frequencies and used encoding schemes consistent with Chinese military designs. Then, investigators found the financial trail. In January of 2007, the United States Treasury Department imposed sanctions on Bank Sepah, Iran's fourth largest state-owned bank. Treasury officials described it as the financial linchpin of Iran's missile procurement network. Through bank Sepah, Iran had purchased missile-related items from China and from COMED, the Korean Mining Development Corporation, North Korea's primary arms export entity. The transactions involved elaborate schemes to disguise the ultimate recipients. Chinese companies would sell dual-use equipment to shell corporations in third countries. Those corporations would route the materials through maritime shipping networks designed to obscure cargo origins. Iranian front companies would take delivery at ports where customs enforcement was minimal. Bank Sepah processed the payments through correspondent accounts at banks in Europe and Asia, structuring transactions to avoid triggering automated sanctions screening systems. Between 2000 and 2010, these networks moved hundreds of millions of dollars worth of missile components, raw materials, and manufacturing equipment into Iran. United Nations investigators documented regular scheduled flights by Air Koryo and Iran Air carrying prohibited ballistic missile technology. Ship tracking data revealed repeated voyages between Chinese ports and Iranian facilities, with vessels sometimes turning off automatic identification systems during transit to avoid detection. But the biggest mystery wasn't how the materials moved. It was what happened to them after they arrived. In October of 2015, Iranian state television broadcast extraordinary footage. Brigadier General Amir Ali Hajizadeh, commander of the Aerospace Force of the Revolutionary Guards, appeared on camera inside a massive underground facility. Behind him stretched tunnel systems large enough to accommodate missile-laden trucks. The weapons were stored vertically in automated magazines that could elevate them to launch positions within minutes. This was Iran's first public acknowledgement of underground missile cities. Hajizadeh revealed that such facilities existed in all provinces and cities throughout the country. The bases were buried at depths of 500 meters, beyond the reach of the most powerful bunker-buster bombs in the American arsenal. Who built these facilities? Constructing underground tunnel complexes requires specialized engineering expertise. The projects demand precision drilling equipment capable of boring through rock at depth. Ventilation systems must prevent accumulation of toxic fumes. Electrical systems need to operate reliably in high humidity environments. Automated railways and elevating platforms require sophisticated hydraulics and computer controls. Iranian construction companies didn't possess this expertise, but North Korean engineers did. North Korea had spent decades building elaborate underground facilities to protect its military infrastructure from American airstrikes. The Democratic People's Republic operated entire factories, ammunition depots, and command centers in mountain complexes. Pyongyang's engineers understood tunnel warfare better than any military in the world. Intelligence reports indicated North Korean specialists helped Iran design and construct its underground missile bases. The collaboration went beyond architecture. North Korean advisors taught Iranian military planners how to conduct camouflage and deception operations. Mobile launchers practiced rapid deployment from hidden tunnel entrances. Dummy launch sites were constructed to draw enemy fire away from real facilities. By 2016, satellite imagery revealed vast new complexes at Kozhir and Modades near Tehran. The facilities featured protective berms, hardened bunkers, and extensive underground structures. Analysts estimated these sites alone could store hundreds of missiles. Isfahan, Iran's largest missile production facility, had expanded significantly. New buildings appeared at Parchin. Construction activity intensified at sites across western and central Iran. Then something happened that nobody predicted. 15 years after that initial meeting with North Korean officials in Damascus. Could you leave a comment with your thoughts below? We love hearing from viewers who follow this investigation. In June of 2025, Israel and Iran fought a 12-day war that military analysts would later call the most intense missile exchange in modern Middle Eastern history. Israel launched Operation Roaring Lion with strikes against Iranian nuclear facilities and missile production sites. Iran responded with massive ballistic missile barrages targeting Israeli population centers. American and Israeli intelligence had estimated Iran possessed approximately 2,000 to 3,000 ballistic missiles before the conflict began. During those 12 days, Iran fired approximately 468 missiles at Israel. Israeli air defenses intercepted over 90%, but the sheer volume of launches overwhelmed initial estimates. Intelligence analysts scrambled to recalculate. If Iran had fired nearly 500 missiles in less than 2 weeks, while sustaining heavy bombardment of its production facilities, launch sites, and storage depots, how many missiles remained? Israeli defense forces estimated they destroyed approximately 1,000 Iranian missiles through strikes on storage facilities and production plants. This meant Iran had depleted roughly half its pre-war stockpile in less than 2 weeks of fighting. Approximately 1,000 to 1,500 missiles remained. The arithmetic suggested Iran would run out of long-range missiles capable of reaching Israel within weeks if the conflict continued. Then, everything changed. By September of 2025, just 3 months after the ceasefire, European intelligence sources detected something alarming. Large cargo ships were departing Chinese ports loaded with chemicals. Manifests listed the cargo as industrial materials, sodium perchlorate, aluminum powder, ammonium perchlorate, all legitimate industrial chemicals with civilian applications, all also critical components for solid rocket fuel. The shipments totaled tonnages sufficient to produce hundreds of missiles. Vessel tracking data showed the ships sailing to Iranian ports. Some turned off transponders during portions of the voyage. Others made unexplained stops at third country ports before continuing to Iran. United Nations sanctions had been reimposed through the JCPOA snapback mechanism in late September. These sanctions explicitly prohibited Iran from undertaking any activity related to ballistic missiles capable of delivering nuclear weapons. They banned the transfer of materials which could contribute to such activity. China was a permanent member of the United Nations Security Council. Chinese officials had voted for previous sanctions resolutions against Iran's missile program. Beijing had publicly committed to enforcing non-proliferation restrictions. Yet Chinese-flagged vessels were delivering rocket fuel precursors to Iran in quantities that indicated industrial-scale production. CNN investigations later confirmed multiple large shipments. Intelligence assessments calculated the volumes could enable production of 500 new missiles. The network facilitating these transfers operated through elaborate mechanisms specifically designed to evade detection and sanctions enforcement. Chinese suppliers used shell companies and front corporations to obscure ownership and destination. Cargo vessels were registered to third country flags of convenience. Payments flowed through informal banking channels, including cryptocurrency and precious metals trading, that bypassed traditional correspondent banking systems where sanction screening occurs. Treasury Department investigators found that Iranian procurement networks had established sophisticated supply chains across multiple countries. A critical shipment of missile guidance components might originate at a factory in Shenzhen. The manufacturer would sell to a Hong Kong trading company that maintained no physical office. That company would invoice a purchasing agent in Dubai who represented a Turkish import-export firm. The Turkish firm would arrange shipping through a vessel registered in Panama, but actually owned by a Singaporean shell corporation. The cargo would be transshipped through multiple ports, perhaps Bandar Abbas to Karachi to Muscat, before finally arriving at an Iranian military facility. Each transaction appeared legitimate in isolation. Only by connecting the entire chain could investigators identify the true end user. By the time they did, the equipment was already inside Iran. But chemicals and components alone don't build missiles. Someone had to teach Iranian engineers how to use advanced materials and production techniques. Someone had to provide technical specifications for new designs. Someone had to supply the precision machinery that turned raw materials into weapons. That someone wasn't just North Korea anymore. In February of 2026, 8 months after the ceasefire, a different picture emerged. Russia was shipping advanced military systems to Iran. The Financial Times reported that Moscow had agreed to deliver 9,336 Verba shoulder-fired anti-aircraft missile systems worth 495 million euros. Deliveries would occur in 3 batches across 2027 through 2029. These weren't ballistic missiles, but their significance went beyond air defense. Russia was demonstrating willingness to ignore United Nations sanctions and supply sophisticated weapons systems to Iran despite international prohibitions. The Verba deal revealed that Moscow viewed Tehran as a strategic partner worth protecting through direct military support. Russia's involvement in Iran's missile program had deeper roots. In October of 1997, Russian engineers from the Central Aerohydrodynamic Institute had contracted to build a wind tunnel at Iran's Shahid Himmat Industrial Group facility. The equipment allowed both Iranian and Russian missile designers to refine the Shahab 3's aerodynamics. Russian entities provided materials, equipment, and training throughout the late 1990s and early 2000s. After sanctions tightened in the 2010s, Russia's overt assistance decreased. But Moscow found other ways to help. In 2022, Russia launched the Kayam spy satellite, built in Russia for Iran through a joint project. The satellite provided Tehran with 1.2-meter resolution imagery, allowing Iranian commanders to monitor specific American and Israeli military bases and plan missile strikes with unprecedented precision. Then came the drone technology exchange. In late 2022, as Russia's war in Ukraine consumed enormous quantities of munitions, Moscow turned to Tehran for help. Iran provided Russia with hundreds of Shahid 136 kamikaze drones. These weapons proved devastatingly effective against Ukrainian infrastructure. Russian forces used them to target power plants, heating facilities, and communications nodes throughout the winter of 2022 through 23. But this wasn't a simple arms sale. Iran transferred complete production technology. Russia established a drone manufacturing facility at the Alabuga Special Economic Zone with Iranian technical assistance. By 2025, Moscow had moved 90% of Shahid assembly to Russian territory and was producing an estimated 2,700 drones per month. Russian engineers refined the design based on combat experience, improved electronic warfare resistance, enhanced range, more effective warheads. Then Moscow began sharing these improvements back to Tehran. Iran's drone designs were now being upgraded through the most intensive real-world testing environment available on the planet, the industrial-scale conventional warfare in Ukraine. This created a technology feedback loop more valuable than any conventional arms sale. Russia provided battlefield data, technical improvements, and operational doctrine. Iran received hardened designs proven against advanced air defenses. China supplied the dual-use components both nations needed to maintain production. The three countries formed an integrated military-industrial ecosystem that operated outside Western control. Intelligence analysts began calling it the axis of evasion. The implications extended far beyond missile counts. Western sanctions policy was based on assumption that export controls and financial restrictions could effectively prevent rogue states from acquiring dangerous military capabilities. That assumption required believing that no major power would systematically violate United Nations Security Council resolutions to arm sanctioned regimes. But China and Russia were doing exactly that, not as isolated violations, as deliberate policy. In March of 2026, American intelligence detected Chinese Y-20 cargo aircraft landing at Tehran's Mirabad airport. The flights increased in frequency after the Iran ceasefire. Satellite reconnaissance photographed large shipping containers being unloaded and transported under military escort. Intelligence analysts debated what the containers held. Some argued China was delivering conventional weapons, perhaps advanced air defense systems or electronic warfare equipment. Others believed the cargo consisted of machinery, computer numerical control lathes, and precision milling equipment essential for manufacturing missile components. A third theory suggested the Chinese were providing tunnel boring equipment to help Iran construct additional underground facilities. The flights continued despite direct warnings from the United States. President Trump threatened to impose 50% tariffs on any nation supplying military weapons to Iran. The Chinese ignored him. Why? Understanding China and Russia's motivations requires examining what they gain from keeping Iran militarily capable. The answer isn't primarily economic. Iran pays for weapons, but neither Russia nor China depends on that revenue. The relationship serves larger strategic purposes. Iran offers both powers a pressure point against American interests in the Middle East. Every missile in Iran's arsenal ties down American military assets. The United States maintains terminal high-altitude area defense systems in the region, specifically to counter Iranian missiles. American naval forces patrol the Persian Gulf, monitoring Iranian military activities. Israeli defense planning centers on the Iranian threat. All of this diverts resources and attention from other theaters, particularly the Western Pacific, where China has territorial ambitions, and Europe, where Russia seeks to undermine NATO. Furthermore, a militarily competent Iran serves as proof that American sanctions don't work. Every successful Iranian missile test demonstrates that determined states can develop prohibited capabilities despite Western export controls. This encourages other nations to defy American restrictions. It undermines the credibility of sanctions as a foreign policy tool. But there was something else. Something the intelligence analysts in that basement office at Langley finally understood after months of reviewing financial records, shipping manifests, and intercepted communications. The missile program wasn't just about Iran anymore. By 2025, Iranian missile technology was showing up in Yemen. The Houthis displayed weapons identical to Iranian designs. United Nations investigators presented evidence that components were manufactured in Iran and shipped to Houthi-controlled territory. The missiles used in the September 2019 attack on Saudi Aramco facilities had Iranian fingerprints throughout their construction. Lebanese Hezbollah had acquired Iranian missiles as early as 2006. Syria operated production facilities built with Iranian assistance. Even Russia was now using Iranian drone technology refined through Chinese components. Iran had become a proliferation hub. North Korea provided the foundation. China supplied the precision components and chemicals. Russia contributed advanced sensors and satellite intelligence. Iran synthesized everything into weapon systems it could manufacture at scale and distribute throughout the region. The question that haunted intelligence analysis wasn't where Iran got thousands of missiles. The answer was hiding in plain sight across 4 decades of determined, state-sponsored proliferation by nations united in opposition to American global influence. The real question was what happens when that same network decides to help Iran develop nuclear-capable intercontinental ballistic missiles. In 2013, North Korea successfully launched a satellite into orbit using the Unha rocket. The technology demonstrated that Pyongyang had mastered the fundamental engineering required for intercontinental range missiles. Within 4 years, North Korea tested the Hwasong-14 and Hwasong-15, true ICBMs, theoretically capable of reaching the continental United States. These missiles used 80-ton rocket boosters based on the RD-250 engine, a Ukrainian design that somehow found its way to North Korea through shadowy procurement networks. American intelligence agencies confirmed that North Korea had shipped components for similar 80-ton boosters to Iran. Transfers continued during the JCPOA negotiations in 2015, even as Iran supposedly committed to limiting its ballistic missile program. The United States Treasury Department sanctioned Iranian official Said Mir Ahmad Nushin in September of 2020. The designation identified him as key to negotiations with North Koreans on long-range missile development projects. United Nations panel of experts reported in 2021 that North Korea had resumed actual shipping of critical parts to Iran for long-range missile projects. The most recent confirmed shipment occurred in 2020. If North Korea had proliferated the RD-250 engine technology to Iran, if they had also transferred knowledge from the Hwasong series missiles, then Iran possessed both advanced intermediate-range ballistic missile capabilities and potentially the foundation for intercontinental range systems. American Defense Intelligence Agency assessments stated that Iran could develop a militarily viable ICBM by 2035 if Tehran decided to pursue the capability. The key phrase was, if Tehran decided. Iran had publicly maintained a self-imposed 2,000-kilometer range limit on its missiles. This kept all of Europe and the entire Middle East in range while avoiding development of systems that could directly threaten the United States. Technology doesn't forget. The engineers who learned solid fuel propulsion from Chinese advisors still worked at Iranian facilities. The North Korean specialists who helped build underground missile cities maintained contact with Iranian counterparts. The procurement networks that moved chemicals and components through sanctions continued operating. In March of 2026, Iran conducted a test that received minimal international attention. Iranian state media announced the successful launch of the Khorramshahr-4 ballistic missile. Official specifications listed range as 3,000 kilometers, with a warhead weight of 1,500 kilograms. These were remarkable parameters, the heaviest warhead and longest range of any missile in Iran's arsenal. Western analysts noted the Khorramshahr-4's design appeared to incorporate technology from North Korea's BM-25, itself a modified Soviet submarine-launched ballistic missile. The progression was clear. Soviet-era technology provided to North Korea decades earlier, refined through North Korean development programs, then transferred to Iran and further upgraded using Chinese precision components and Russian satellite targeting data. 4 decades after that desperate meeting beneath Tehran during the War of the Cities, Iran had achieved the self-sufficiency its leaders demanded. But the path to that self-sufficiency revealed something more unsettling than any individual weapon system. 3 nations operating outside Western economic and political systems had demonstrated they could build and sustain a sophisticated military-industrial ecosystem that actively defied international law while avoiding significant consequences. The United Nations sanctions that supposedly restricted arms transfers and ballistic missile activity existed primarily on paper. Enforcement mechanisms had failed completely. By early 2026, Iran was producing dozens of new missiles each month, despite having lost hundreds during the war with Israel. Chinese chemicals arrived in bulk. Russian satellite intelligence guided targeting. North Korean specialists advised on underground construction. The entire network operated with such brazen disregard for sanctions that Chinese cargo planes landed in Tehran within hours of American threats to impose tariffs. And here was the final twist that intelligence analysts only fully grasped after assembling 4 decades of evidence. Iran wasn't the end point of this proliferation network. Iran was becoming the source. In 2024, Ukrainian forces began recovering missile fragments on battlefields across their country. Analysis revealed something unexpected. Some components matched designs seen in Iranian weapon systems. Russia had been receiving Iranian drones since 2022. Now, evidence suggested Russia was also receiving missile technology, subsystems, or possibly complete weapons. The student had become the teacher. The nation that started with nothing but desperation and a handful of purchased scuds now possessed capabilities it could export to the very powers that had enabled its rise. Iran sold drones to Russia. Russian forces used them against Ukraine. Russia improved the designs using Chinese specialists. Iran received the upgrades. The cycle continued. Western intelligence agencies found themselves trapped in a paradox. 40 years of sanctions, export controls, military strikes, diplomatic pressure, and economic isolation had failed to prevent Iran from building one of the largest missile arsenals in the world. The tools that supposedly guaranteed American security dominance, control of international financial systems, restrictions on dual-use technology, United Nations enforcement mechanisms, had proven ineffective against determined state actors willing to collaborate in defying those restrictions. The missile facilities at Isfahan still operate. The underground complexes at Kojir and Parchin still store weapons. The procurement network still move chemicals and components through third countries. Mobile launchers still practice rapid deployment from tunnel systems. In January of 2026, The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps released propaganda footage showing commanders riding through extensive tunnel systems lined with missiles, Ghadr H and Imad liquid fuel systems, alongside Khaybar Shekan, Sejil, and Hajj Qasem solid fuel weapons. The message was clear. Despite strikes, despite sanctions, despite everything. The analyst who first noticed the arithmetic problem, who asked where Iran got thousands of missiles, now had her answer. Not from one source, not through one method. Through systematic, multi-decade proliferation involving 3 major powers and dozens of front companies, shell corporations, and sanctions evasion networks. Through the determined transformation of a nation that started the 1980s with a dozen primitive missiles into a country that could fire 500 sophisticated weapons in 2 weeks, while simultaneously maintaining production capacity to rebuild depleted stocks within months. Through the patient construction of an entire parallel global system for military technology transfer that operates completely outside Western control, while leveraging Western supply chains for the dual-use components it requires. The report she wrote sat classified in secure databases across multiple intelligence agencies. It documented shipping routes, identified key individuals, tracked financial flows, and connected 4 decades of procurement into a single narrative. Policymakers read executive summaries. Military planners incorporated the findings into threat assessments. Sanctions designers added new names to restriction lists. None of it changed the fundamental reality. Iran possessed thousands of missiles, not because of brilliant indigenous engineering or unique technical innovation. Iran possessed thousands of missiles because North Korea, China, and Russia decided that keeping Iran militarily capable served their strategic interests more than respecting United Nations Security Council resolutions or American demands for non-proliferation compliance. And that same network still exists, still operates, still transfers technology, components, and expertise to any nation willing to pay and oppose American influence. The War of the Cities ended in July of 1988, when Iran accepted United Nations Resolution 598. Ayatollah Khomeini called the decision drinking from a chalice of poison. The ceasefire came after 533 Iraqi missiles had struck Iranian cities, carrying the Iranian population through 52 days of bombardment that convinced Tehran's leadership that continuing the war served no purpose. 38 years later, the missiles those attacks spawned number in the thousands, spread across underground facilities throughout Iran, and integrate technology from 3 of the most sophisticated military-industrial powers on Earth. The poison in that chalice tasted bitter in 1988, but it seeded something that would grow into the largest ballistic missile arsenal in the Middle East, sustained by a proliferation network that proves international sanctions cannot contain determined nations acting in concert. Intelligence analysts still monitor shipping routes. Satellites still track cargo vessels between Chinese ports and Iranian facilities. Diplomats still negotiate sanctions at the United Nations. And every month, Iranian engineers produce dozens more missiles using chemicals from China, designs from North Korea, and targeting data from Russian satellites. The answer was there all along, scattered across decades of intelligence reports, sanctions violations, and ignored warnings. Iran got thousands of missiles the same way any nation acquires sophisticated military capabilities it cannot develop alone. through patient cultivation of strategic partnerships with powers who share its opposition to the existing international order. And those powers are still shipping components today.
The meeting is adjourned.
We are announcing today that Bank Sepah has been designated as a proliferator of weapons of mass destruction.
The orbital view clearly